Maya Henderson thought her best friend Zoe Lane would always protect her, but behind every comforting hug and concerned glance was a chilling secret. Zoe was the man Maya had fallen in love with online. Olivia Tran noticed something was wrong. Too late, and when Maya finally tried to escape, it wasn't just her heart at risk, it was her life. Now, both Maya and Zoe have vanished without a trace, and the only clue left behind is a flash drive filled with obsession, betrayal, and a horrifying game of control. Maya Henderson had always been the type of person who kept to herself but still radiated a quiet charm that drew others in. At 24, she lived in a peaceful suburb outside Portland, Oregon, working part-time at a local bookstore and spending most of her free time sketching designs for clothes she dreamed of one day selling. Under her own brand. She wasn't famous, but she had a small, dedicated online following who admired her creativity. Maya's world was quiet, orderly, and filled with routine, until everything began to unravel in the final weeks of summer. She had a best friend named Zoe Lane, someone she had known since middle school. Zoe was everything Maya wasn't: outspoken, magnetic, and commanding in any room she entered. People naturally gravitated toward her. Over the years, their friendship had developed cracks, but Maya never dared to address them. Zoe often teased her for being naive, for living in a fantasy world of sketchbooks and romantic daydreams. But Maya always brushed it off. She thought it was just Zoe's way of being blunt. What she didn't know was that Zoe had started resenting her quiet happiness. There was something about Maya's calm confidence that gnawed at her. Zoe couldn't explain it. It wasn't hatred, but it wasn't love either. It was something in between, a need to control. Everything changed in early August when Maya began talking about someone new. His name was Chris Halden, and he had messaged her through a design sharing platform. He said he'd stumbled on her work, loved her style, and wanted to know more. Chris was kind, articulate, and thoughtful. He asked questions no one else ever had about her creative process, her dreams, her childhood. He sent music recommendations that matched her tastes perfectly. Over time, their conversations moved to private messaging, then texting, and soon, they were talking every evening. Maya lit up in a way Zoe hadn't seen in years. For the first time, Maya was distracted, no longer relying on Zoe for emotional connection. And that, more than anything, was what sparked something dark inside her. Chris Halden wasn't real. He was a creation, a carefully assembled illusion made by Zoe. What started as a harmless joke, a way to test how gullible Maya could be, turned into a long-term deception. Zoe had spent nights stealing photos from an obscure Canadian photographer's profile, writing out messages, and memorizing details of Maya's past to make the conversation seem real. The power was addictive. She was pulling the strings behind Maya's heart, and every time Maya smiled at her phone, Zoe felt a twisted sense of triumph. Maya fell hard. She believed she had found someone who truly understood her. She began to distance herself from her coworkers, from her art community, and especially from Zoe. Her sketches shifted, more romantic, more hopeful. She would daydream for hours about her future with Chris. He made her feel seen. But Chris didn't want to meet, not at first. He claimed to be traveling, tied up in work, then caring for a sick relative. Maya, ever patient, waited. She didn't want to push. She believed that if she was understanding, it would work out. In early September, Maya told Zoe that she and Chris were finally planning to meet. She was nervous but thrilled. She asked Zoe to help her choose an outfit and talked about all the places she wanted to take him. Zoe pretended to be supportive, but inside she panicked. If Maya discovered the truth, everything would collapse. So Zoe did what she felt was necessary. The night before the meeting, Chris sent Maya a message saying he couldn't come. Something terrible had happened, a family emergency. Maya cried for hours, her world suddenly fragile. The next day, she confided everything to Zoe, who acted like the shoulder to lean on. But she didn't feel guilty. If anything, she felt justified. Maya spiraled in the following days. Her eyes lost their usual sparkle, and her voice grew faint. She couldn't sleep, couldn't draw, and her appetite vanished. Her coworkers noticed, especially Olivia Tran, who offered to talk, but Maya declined. She didn't want anyone to know how deeply she had fallen for a person she had never met. She didn't even fully understand why it hurt so much. All she knew was that something had been ripped from her, and she didn't realize the knife had been in Zoe's hand the entire time. Maya stopped posting her artwork online. The bright colors and hopeful captions she once shared were replaced with silence. Her online followers noticed, leaving concerned comments and messages, but she ignored them. Days turned into weeks, and her once structured life fell into disarray. She stopped showing up at the bookstore on time, and sometimes not at all. Olivia Tran, her coworker and the only one who still tried to check in, mentioned it to the manager, but Maya brushed it off as exhaustion. Deep down, she felt broken. Her world had revolved around someone who never existed, and she didn't know how to admit that to anyone, not even to herself. Zoe watched the unraveling from the front row. She never mentioned Chris again, but she continued to hover around. Maya, always present, always helpful. She brought food Maya wouldn't eat, offered rides she didn't need, and sat in silence beside her like a shadow. There was no remorse in her presence, only an unsettling calm. It was as though she was waiting for something. In her mind, the situation had shifted. Maya was vulnerable now, moldable. Whatever spark of independence had briefly flickered inside her had gone out, and Zoe intended to keep it that way. But something unexpected happened. Maya began journaling. It started one evening after finding an old notebook at the bottom of her closet. She didn't mean to write anything important, just thoughts, fragments of her feelings, questions she couldn't answer. But soon, the entries grew longer, more detailed. She wrote about Chris, what he had said, how he made her feel, the patterns in his behavior. And gradually, her confusion turned into curiosity. There were gaps that didn't make sense, timelines that didn't add up, and moments that now felt rehearsed. The journal became a place where Maya could be honest. Even if only with herself. As she wrote more, her instincts started to sharpen. She remembered Zoe's odd reactions during her relationship with Chris. The way she never seemed genuinely excited. The time she had said something that Chris had echoed almost word for word the next day. At first, Maya dismissed it as coincidence, but it kept happening. Tiny details began to connect like pieces of a puzzle she hadn't realized she was assembling. The unease grew slowly, crawling under her skin, until it was impossible to ignore. One night, unable to sleep, Maya logged into the old design sharing app where she'd first met Chris. She scrolled through the archived messages, looking for anything out of place. It was subtle, but she noticed inconsistencies, phrases Chris used that sounded familiar, emojis he sent that matched Zoe's texting habits, references to memories only someone close to her would know. Her hands trembled as she read them again and again. The illusion she had believed in for weeks began to crack, and in its place, a terrifying thought took root. She didn't confront Zoe. Not right away. Instead, she tested her. She told Zoe about a fictional conversation she'd supposedly had with Chris weeks before. She made up a fake memory and watched closely as Zoe nodded in recognition. That was when she knew her best friend had been lying. The realization didn't come with rage or tears. It came with numbness. She felt cold, empty, like her trust had been hollowed out and filled with something unrecognizable. She had no idea why Zoe would do something so elaborate and cruel. She didn't understand what satisfaction could come from faking an entire person just to manipulate her emotions. The next morning, Maya called in sick to work and stayed in bed. She didn't eat, didn't shower, just stared at the ceiling trying to make sense of what had happened to her. The betrayal was too personal to explain to anyone. She had loved someone who didn't exist, someone created by the person she trusted most. It wasn't just a lie, it was a violation of her reality. Every message, every hope, every decision she had made over the past 2 months was based on fiction. Meanwhile, Zoe acted as though nothing had changed. She still brought over coffee, still asked if Maya needed anything. But Maya barely looked at her. She had begun to see through the mask. And behind it, she saw something far darker than she had ever imagined. Something calculating. Something dangerous. But she didn't yet understand the full scope of Zoe's plan. She thought the worst had already happened. She had no idea that the betrayal was just the beginning. Maya withdrew from everyone. She deleted her social media apps, stopped answering messages, and ignored phone calls. Even Olivia eventually stopped trying. Maya no longer trusted her own judgment. The world felt unfamiliar now, tainted by the revelation that someone she had known her entire life had orchestrated her emotional collapse. She moved through her days like a ghost, speaking only when necessary, keeping her eyes lowered in public, and avoiding mirrors because she no longer recognized the person staring back at her. She didn't tell anyone about what she had discovered. Part of her still hoped she was wrong, that maybe there was an explanation, a misunderstanding. But each day, the weight of the truth grew heavier. Zoe had created Chris. Zoe had watched her fall in love. Zoe had manipulated every emotion, every decision. The betrayal was so deep, it felt like a kind of psychological poisoning, slow, invisible, and lethal. Still, a part of Maya couldn't let it go. Her journal became an obsession. She wrote daily, cataloging every interaction with Zoe, trying to decipher the moments that led up to it. She combed through text threads and old photos, retraced conversations and timelines. She wasn't sure what she was looking for anymore. Proof, closure, maybe a reason. Anything that would help her understand why her best friend had done this. Then, something shifted again. Zoe began acting strangely. She started showing up uninvited more often, asking probing questions, hovering too long during silences. She would stare at Maya in ways that felt off, her smiles too wide, her gestures overly rehearsed. It was as if Zoe sensed that Maya knew something, but wasn't sure how much. The tension between them turned suffocating. Maya began locking her bedroom door at night, something she had never done before. She started hiding her journal, erasing her browser history, and looking over her shoulder whenever she left the house. One evening, Maya noticed that her bedroom window had been opened slightly. She knew she hadn't left it that way. Her journal had been moved. The bookmark she used was no longer in the right spot. Panic crept into her chest as she checked her drawers, her closet, and the corners of the room. Nothing else was missing, but she felt exposed, violated. She stayed awake the entire night, convinced that someone had been in her room while she slept. The next day, she bought a small motion-activated camera and hid it on her bookshelf. She didn't tell anyone. She didn't sleep much after that. Every noise in the house made her flinch. Every shadow on the wall made her pause. And still, Zoe kept coming around, smiling like nothing had changed, asking if Maya was feeling better, offering to bring groceries or help with chores. 2 nights later, Maya checked the footage from the camera. At 3:12 a.m., someone had entered her room. The figure moved slowly, deliberately. The outline was unmistakable, shoulders slightly hunched, hair tied up, phone light pointed toward the desk. Zoe. She stood over Maya's journal for almost 10 minutes. She never touched anything else. Just read. Then she left. Maya's hands shook as she watched the video again. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was something darker, something obsessive. Zoe wasn't just guilty. She was watching her, studying her, trying to stay ahead of her. The realization hit Maya like a tidal wave. She wasn't safe. This wasn't about a prank that got out of hand. This was control, surveillance, domination. And Maya had become a prisoner in her own life. She backed up the video footage onto a flash drive and hid it in her closet. She didn't call the police. She wasn't ready to explain what was happening, and she wasn't sure they'd believe her. After all, she didn't have bruises or threats. Just a friend who smiled too much, showed up too often, and watched her while she slept. But Maya knew. She couldn't keep living like this. She began quietly looking for ways to get out: sublets, short-term housing, maybe even a shelter. She didn't want to be anywhere Zoe could find her. What Maya didn't realize was that Zoe already suspected everything. She had seen the shift. The way Maya no longer leaned in, no longer laughed, no longer cried in front of her. And Zoe didn't like losing control. What had started as a game had become an obsession. And she wasn't going to let Maya walk away without consequences. Maya began planning her escape in silence. She told no one, not Olivia, not her parents, not even her former art community, who still left the occasional message wondering where she'd gone. She no longer trusted people the way she once had. Every conversation felt like a potential trap, every smile a mask hiding something sinister. Her world had narrowed down to one goal: get away from Zoe Lane before it was too late. She started packing a little each day, just the essentials: a few clothes, her sketchbooks, her journal, and the flash drive containing the video footage. She found a studio apartment 3 neighborhoods away, listed on a local housing forum under a pseudonym. The landlord didn't ask questions and agreed to let her move in within the week. The place was small and furnished only with a bed, a desk, and a single window overlooking a back alley. But it was far enough from Zoe. That was all Maya needed. In public, she still pretended everything was fine. Zoe came over 3 times that week, and Maya forced herself to act normal. She smiled when Zoe made jokes and nodded during conversations. But inside, her nerves were coiled like a spring. She had learned to lie with her face the way Zoe had lied for months. Every second they spent together now felt like a performance. Then, on the night before she planned to leave, Zoe arrived unexpectedly. She brought wine, claiming it had been a stressful week and she needed company. Maya didn't want to let her in, but refusing would have raised suspicion. So she opened the door and led Zoe inside, heart pounding beneath her calm exterior. The evening dragged. Zoe talked more than usual, her tone light, but her eyes constantly scanning the room. She asked strange questions: if Maya had been writing again, if she was still dreaming about Chris, if she thought about leaving town. Maya answered carefully, avoiding details. When Zoe went to the kitchen to pour more wine, Maya noticed her phone had been left on the table, unlocked. Something buzzed on the screen. A message preview. Maya leaned in just long enough to catch a glimpse of a name she didn't recognize and a chilling line of text. Did she find out yet? Maya quickly backed away, heart hammering. She didn't know what it meant or who had sent it, but it confirmed what she feared. Zoe wasn't acting alone. There was someone else involved. Maybe not in the creation of Chris, but now, in whatever game Zoe was still playing. Maya had no idea how deep it went. The illusion of control she thought she'd regained was crumbling fast. After Zoe left that night, Maya didn't sleep. She sat in the dark for hours, staring at the packed bag near the door, questioning everything. Again, could she still leave in the morning? Was Zoe watching her? Would she follow? She checked the locks 3 times and pulled the curtain shut. At dawn, she quietly loaded her things into a rideshare car and left without saying goodbye to anyone. New apartment offered only a brief sense of relief. The silence felt different, heavier, like something had followed her. She changed her number, bought a prepaid phone, and created new accounts using fake names. She didn't tell Olivia where she was or even send a farewell message. She cut off everyone. Isolation felt safer than trust. But 2 days after settling into the new apartment, something arrived in her mailbox. An unmarked envelope. Inside was a photo, grainy, clearly taken from a distance. It showed Maya through her apartment window, sitting at her desk with her. Back turned to the camera. No note. No return address. Just the image. Panic surged through her. She had told no one her address. She hadn't updated any of her public records. Only one person could have found her, and that person knew how to lie, how to manipulate, and how to break into a locked room in the middle of the night. Maya kept the photo, but this time she didn't write about it. She unplugged the camera and taped over the windows. She began sleeping with a kitchen knife under her pillow. The fear was no longer abstract. It had a face, a history, and a name she used to say with affection. Now, every creak in the hallway, every shadow under the door, reminded her that Zoe wasn't done. And the truth was, Maya didn't know how far Zoe would go to keep control. But something in her gut told her the worst was still ahead. Maya barely left her apartment after the photo arrived. The single window stayed covered with black trash bags duct taped to the frame. She kept the lights off at night and moved only in the spaces the outside world couldn't see. Her phone remained powered down and hidden inside a drawer. She stopped journaling, stopped sketching, stopped doing anything that once brought her peace. Each hour that passed without incident only made her more anxious. She felt like she was waiting for something inevitable, like a fuse had been lit, and all she could do was brace for the explosion. The photo had shattered whatever illusion of safety she had managed to build in her new place. Every knock on the door made her flinch. Every voice in the hallway sent her pulse racing. She listened for footsteps in the stairwell and kept a glass bottle next to her bed, just in case. It wasn't paranoia anymore. It was preparation. Zoe had found her once. There was no reason she wouldn't do it again. A week later, Maya went to check the mailbox, only to find it already open. Inside was another envelope. This one was heavier. She took it back upstairs, locked every deadbolt, and only then opened it. There were 4 items inside. A printed map of the city with a red X drawn over her apartment complex. A photo of her walking alone at night near a convenience store. A USB flash drive. And a folded piece of paper with only 4 words printed in all caps. You still trust me. Her hands trembled as she held the note. The message wasn't about fear, it was about ownership. Zoe wasn't just watching her. She was taunting her, reminding her that escape was a fantasy. Maya considered going to the police again, but the same questions haunted her. What would she even say? Her best friend catfished her, broke into her home, and was now stalking her. With no visible motive? There were no bruises, no threats, no fingerprints, just a trail of psychological terror that no one could see but her. She plugged the USB into an old laptop, disconnected from the internet. A folder opened automatically. It contained dozens of text files, screenshots, and audio recordings. Most were logs of conversations between her and Chris, organized by date and tagged with analysis. Some files contained Zoe's own notes, cold, methodical observations of Maya's behavior, times when she cried, moments when she was most open to manipulation. There were audio recordings too, her own voice, recorded without her knowledge. Phone calls, conversations in her room. One file was a recording of her sobbing after Chris had canceled their meeting. Maya felt sick. This wasn't just a fake romance. It was a psychological case study. Zoe had been documenting her reactions, her emotional patterns, everything. It was control on a level Maya couldn't have imagined. It was clear now that the entire experience had never been about Chris. It had always been about Zoe's power over her. She sat frozen for hours, unable to move, unable to cry. The betrayal had taken on a new shape. It was clinical, predatory. She thought she had hit rock bottom before, but this was deeper, darker. She deleted the files, destroyed the USB, and packed her bag again. She knew now she couldn't wait for the police to understand. She had to disappear. Why the next morning, Maya had abandoned the apartment. She left the keys on the kitchen counter and walked out with only a backpack. She took a bus to another city under a fake name, and checked into a budget motel. No forwarding address. No digital footprint. She paid in cash, used burner phones, and spoke to no one. She vanished. But Zoe didn't point. 3 months later, police found Maya's old apartment. Vandalized. Walls marked with her name. Mirrors shattered. Sketches nailed to the wall with kitchen knives. A neighbor reported seeing a woman in the building the night before. Security footage showed her face clearly. Zoe Lane, smiling at the camera, holding a bouquet of red flowers. By the time authorities began investigating her, Zoe had already disappeared too. Her apartment was empty. Her phone disconnected. Her social accounts wiped clean. It was as though she had simply evaporated, following the trail Maya left behind. To this day, Maya hasn't been found. Neither has Zoe. Some say Maya is hiding, living under a new name in another country. Others believe Zoe caught up to her. There are no answers, only rumors, screenshots, and fragments of a friendship that turned into a nightmare. The story of two girls who grew up together and how one used trust as a weapon, leaving behind nothing but shadows.